Today's jet transport engines are the most reliable and powerful aircraft engines ever developed over the past 40 years. Technological improvements have increased the amount of thrust, improved fuel consumption, reduced noise, and reduced unwanted emissions to accomplish these advances. Internal engine's pressure has been greatly increased. It also has increased the reliability of today's high bypass turbine engines. The reliability of gas turbine engine has reached a level where severe engine failure is so unlikely that most pilots will never experience one in their flying career. However, modern turbine engines can still fail, and when they fail, what about a loud bang and high vibration, or just quietly decay to zero thrust? The pilot is expected to recognize the specific engine problem and then to take appropriate action. Over the last several years, this has increased in their trainings.
High reliability. When a malfunction occurs, it is frequently the first time the flight crew is exposed to the true sensations of that malfunction. While simulators have greatly improved pilot training, they've not always realistically simulated the actual noise, vibration, and aerodynamic forces certain engine malfunctions cause. It also appears that the greater the physical sensations the pilot feels during the malfunction, the greater the startle factor, and the greater the likelihood the flight crew will try to diagnose the problem immediately instead of flying the aircraft first. When flight crews are interviewed after engine malfunction events, such as the surge of a large high bypass engine during initial climb out, they make very similar comments regarding the event. Pilots will often report that it felt like a bomb went off, or that the aircraft was falling apart. Each time an event occurred, the sound and the feel of the event were different, and often much more intense than indicated by any training the crews had received. Because of this, the flight crew either did not recognize the engine symptom or was so concerned about the engine that they responded without taking time to correctly evaluate the situation. In each case, additional time spent in stabilizing the airplane's flight path before responding to the engine symptom would have avoided a serious event. Remember, all transport category aircraft are designed and certified to be controllable with the most critical engine failed. Unlike early turboprops, turbofan-powered airplanes do not require immediate pilot action to the engine in the event of a single engine malfunction or failure. Once the flight path is stabilized, the engine malfunction may be safely identified and the appropriate checklists executed. Taking the time to stabilize the flight path may sometimes lead to further engine damage, but despite that, the airplane still has the capability of safe flight. Engines are tested during initial certification to demonstrate ruggedness following bird and ice ingestion. Even after a major failure, such as the loss of an entire fan blade, which is an extremely rare event, the engine shuts down safely and the airplane is still airworthy. Service history of fleet aircraft verifies that there are generally no engine failures requiring an instant engine shutdown in order to maintain airplane safety, and that continuing a takeoff after an engine failure at V1 is safer than rejecting the takeoff. So, the capability to recognize turbine engine malfunctions must be learned. But how? The objective of this video is to provide pilots with information to help them recognize and identify various engine malfunctions that have led to inappropriate crew responses and accidents in the past. These malfunctions include fire warnings, tailpipe fires, bird strikes, vibration, engine surge, severe engine damage, and slow power loss. In each case, the first priority is to employ the basic stick and rudder inputs necessary to maintain aerodynamic control of the aircraft. Remember, fly the airplane and then identify and respond to the engine malfunction when time permits. Fire warnings result from excessively high temperature in the space between the engine casings and cowling, or from fire detection system malfunctions. The heat source may be an actual fire around the engine, an engine failure allowing core air to escape through a hole in the casings, or a leak of hot air from a bleed duct. Whenever a fire warning occurs, the first priority must be to fly the airplane. Once the airplane is stabilized, attention should then be directed toward execution of the appropriate checklist. Even if there is an actual fire, there is adequate isolation between the airplane structure and the nacelle to ensure sufficient time to establish and maintain airplane control to a safe altitude. Taking this time may cause further fire damage within the nacelle, but accident reports consistently show that flight path control must be focused on first, and it must remain a high priority until landing. Engine torching, or tailpipe fires, mostly occur during an abnormal engine start, but they may also occur after shutdown or during other ground operations. Although there may be no cockpit engine instrument indication, these events can be very spectacular when viewed from the ramp or cabin, and have been confused with an actual engine fire. The torching may be of short duration or it may last for several seconds. Note that the flame is confined to the tailpipe. Flames may turn upward and threaten the wing if no airflow is maintained through the engine, and in some cases, an EGT increase may be indicated on the flight deck. Simply cutting fuel flow while continuing to motor the engine normally extinguishes the flames. The flight crew depends on ground personnel to identify engine torching. If you are told of an engine fire without any flight deck indications of a fire, follow the engine torching procedure as outlined in your flight manual. This procedure will direct you to motor the engine and extinguish the flames. The regular fire procedure will not. Do not perform the engine fire procedure unless a fire warning indication occurs. Executing the regular fire procedure may disable bleed air to the engine starter and prevent you from being able to motor the engine to blow out the tailpipe fire. There have been cases where flight attendants or passengers have initiated evacuations due to engine torching. These unnecessary evacuations can be minimized by prompt flight deck and cabin crew coordination to provide passengers with pertinent information and to alleviate their concerns. Bird strike is a concern for every pilot. The birds may be observed by the flight crew, or the first indication of a bird ingestion may be an engine surge. Flocking birds are a particular concern since they can affect more than one engine. It may be difficult to see the birds and to know how many engines have ingested birds.
V1, rotate. Birds.
I check the birds.
Come on, baby, keep flying.
Keep going now.
Keep flying. Positive rate.
Yeah.
Come on, baby, that's it. Nice job. Fly the airplane. There's 400 feet.
Okay, what's the problem?
Most bird strikes occur close to the ground, at the very time when there is least opportunity to appraise the situation. Nevertheless, the record shows that establishing flight path control first before taking action on the engine is a more successful strategy than taking immediate action with the engine. There have been accidents resulting from bird strike-related rejected takeoffs above V1 speed, and in each case, the airplane was in fact safe to fly. Therefore, rejecting a takeoff due to a bird strike at speeds above V1 is not considered to be appropriate. Bird strike by an engine may be accompanied by audible thuds, vibration, engine surge, unpleasant odors, and abnormal engine instrument readings such as high EGT. Throttling back an engine may be needed to clear a stall after the airplane has been placed on a stable flight path. If the engine involved cannot be positively identified, do not shut it down. In the unlikely event of multiple engines surging, prompt action may be required to clear the stall on the engines one at a time to assure that some power is available later. Engine vibration may be caused by a fan unbalance. This can come from ice buildup. It may also come from the fan blade material loss or aerodynamic excitation from blade distortion due to foreign object damage. Vibration can also come from internal engine failure such as a bearing failure. Cross-reference of all engine parameters will help to establish whether an engine failure actually exists. Engine-induced vibration felt on the flight deck may not be indicated on instruments. For some engine failures, severe vibration may be experienced after the engine has been shut down to the point where instruments are difficult to read. This vibration is caused by the unbalanced fan, windmilling at an engine speed close to an airframe's natural frequency, which amplifies the vibration. Changing airspeed and/or altitude will change the fan windmill speed, and an airplane's speed may be found where there will be much less vibration. There is no risk of an airplane structural failure due to vibratory engine loads during this windmilling action. From a flight crew member's perspective, one of the most startling events is the engine surge or stall on takeoff or during flight. An engine surge is, in the simplest terms, the breakdown of the airflow in a turbine engine. When the compressor blades stall, they are no longer able to force the air through the engine from front to rear. Now the high-pressure air in the middle of the engine can escape explosively from front and back simultaneously. Usually there are visible flames from both ends of the engine, accompanied with one or more very loud bangs. This violent airflow reversal will produce an instant loss of thrust and an immediate yaw that will literally spill most of the coffee from your cup. This yaw is accompanied by a vibration that cannot be duplicated in the simulator. Bird strikes, internal engine failures, engine pneumatic bleed malfunctions, or internal engine clearance changes can cause a surge. It is usually a problem in the compressor system and so is often referred to as a compressor surge or compressor stall. The magnitude of the symptoms, such as the loudness of the noise and the severity of the vibration, vary with the power setting and the type of instability in the compression system. Low altitude and high power settings produce the loudest bangs and the most violent yaw and vibration. High altitude surges are frequently associated with engine power changes during leveling off or when initiating an altitude change. High altitude surges generally result in a muffled noise, light vibration, and increasing EGT, and may require power reduction to clear the condition. Some surges allow the engine to recover with no flight crew action. Others recover after flight crew action to reduce power. The most severe surges are non-recoverable. When the engine recovers by itself, it is best to just fly the airplane and not interfere with the engine. Identification of a recoverable compressor surge or stall condition based on engine parameter fluctuations or changes alone can be difficult, due in part to the fact that the event is usually over in the blink of an eye. Generally, most flight crews identify the condition as an engine malfunction when the EGT exceeds its limits or the EGT gauge turns red. If EGT continues to rise following a surge, the thrust lever should be retarded to allow the engine to recover. Then, after the engine recovers, power should be reapplied slowly. If the engine does not stall again when the power lever is re-advanced, the power can be left high. If the engine stalls again with the reapplication of power lever input, the power setting may need to be left at a lower power or idle condition. Continue to fly the airplane to ensure the indications return to normal. If the engine does not recover or the EGT remains out of limits, then a shutdown of the engine may be the logical choice depending on the operational situation. Your flight manual and checklists identify the specific procedures to follow. Remember that an engine at idle still provides power for airplane systems and creates less drag than if shut down. There have been numerous occasions where a high-power compressor surge has occurred during the takeoff roll or initial climb out, and the flight crew was notified by the tower that an engine was on fire. As a result, the flight crews accomplished the engine fire checklist and shut down the engine, even though there was no fire warning enunciated in the cockpit. The tower saw fire out the inlet and tailpipe, and their information regarding seeing flames outside the engine was correct, but an engine shutdown was not necessary since this was not actually an aircraft fire. While the likelihood of high-power engine surge is rare, the startle factor associated with loud bangs and airplane vibration has led to instances of inappropriate action such as rejecting the takeoff after the V1 speed, shutting down the wrong engine, improperly executing the failure climb profile, or failing to comply with established ground tracks to clear rising terrain. Only take action to address the surge after stabilizing the flight path. Recent interviews with pilots who have experienced high-power compressor surge malfunctions during takeoff and initial climb have revealed that they have initially thought that a bomb had exploded, or that they hit a truck, or had a mid-air collision. Remember, no matter how loud the bang, airplane control is always the first priority. In the event of a major internal engine failure resulting in severe engine damage, there may be a variety of symptoms on the flight deck. Fire warnings, engine surge, vibration, high EGT, fluctuating RPM, oil system parameters out of limits, and thrust loss. Any one of these symptoms alone could be from a more benign malfunction, but multiple symptoms are a good indication of severe engine damage, and visual inspection by the cabin crew can be very helpful in confirming this. Visual symptoms may include flames, smoke, or visual damage to engine cowlings. It may not be possible to distinguish initially between an engine surge without damage and one accompanying severe damage. The symptoms of the two kinds of events can be very similar, and from an operational standpoint, it is not important to know immediately which of the two has occurred. If it does become necessary to shut down the engine, wait until you positively identify the engine you select as actually being the malfunctioning engine. It should be noted that even an engine which may show signs of visible damage and visible flames may very well be producing useful power necessary for initial climb out. Again, the first priority is to fly the airplane, not the engine. After you have positive control of the aircraft's flight path, then identify and secure the affected engine when time permits. Diagnosis of exactly what caused the engine problem is neither necessary nor safe if it diverts resources from flying the airplane. The malfunctions discussed so far have compelling cues, such as loud bangs, vibration, and warning or advisory messages. In each case, the challenge is to fly the airplane without being distracted by very compelling or alarming engine symptoms. The last type of malfunction to be discussed here is more subtle: slow decay of thrust, or non-response to power lever. These can be subtle in fact to the point that it can be completely overlooked, with potentially serious consequences to the airplane. If an engine slowly reduces power, or when the thrust lever is moved the engine does not respond, then the airplane will experience asymmetric thrust. The problems will most likely develop at a point during the flight when the autopilot is engaged. The autopilot will compensate for the asymmetrical thrust on its own. It takes an alert flight crew to recognize the situation that's developing. If the airplane is badly mistrimmed when the autopilot is manually disconnected, or when the autopilot reaches the limits of its authority and automatically disconnects, only seconds remain before an unusual attitude is encountered. If no external visual references are available, such as flying over the water at night or an IMC, the likelihood of an upset increases. This condition of low-power engine loss with the autopilot on has caused several aircraft upsets, which were not always recoverable. Flight control displacement or trim input indicators may be the only obvious indication that the autopilot is trimming the aircraft away from the coordinated flight. Vigilance is required to detect these stealthy engine malfunctions and to maintain a safe flight attitude while the situation is still recoverable. But a slowly changing asymmetric thrust problem is not an easy one to detect. Symptoms may include multiple system problems such as generators dropping offline, low engine oil pressure, unexplained airplane attitude changes, significant differences between primary parameters from one engine to the next. If asymmetric thrust is suspected, the pilot must be prepared to make immediate rudder or trim inputs to avoid an uncommanded aircraft roll. The first response must be to make the appropriate rudder input or trim adjustment. Disconnecting the autopilot without appropriate control input or trim adjustments may result in a rapid roll maneuver. Different aircraft from different airframe manufacturers display different types of indicators to the pilot regarding the amount of trim the autopilot may be adding to the system. Consult your flight manual and training department to gain a full understanding of how your particular aircraft provides visual, audible, or tactile indications of the amount of trim being added by the autopilot. The sequence of events and severity of symptoms experienced during an engine malfunction may vary from the events shown in this video and from those experienced in a simulator. Engine malfunctions vary from one event to the next. The failures shown here were selected as relatively severe, but not the most severe that have ever occurred. Simulation of failures may be limited by simulator capability, which may not permit realistic levels of noise and vibration symptoms. Industry is currently addressing these concerns to enhance the simulation realism for such failures. This video is intended to provide general information on the characteristics of some high bypass engine failures and malfunctions. It is not intended to be an in-depth study of all possible engine failure modes. Specific remedial action to be taken in the event of an engine failure is published in the Airplane Flight or Operating Manual.